Hello, Emma. How are you doing today?
Hello, my dear. I'm very well. It's lovely to be here with you.
Yes, thanks for coming on again. In case anyone is new to the podcast, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. And so I'm Emma Dhesi. I am a author and a book coach, and I'm based in Edinburgh in the UK. And in my own writing, I write domestic suspense and thriller. And then in my coaching, I work with debut novelists, with first-time novelists, which is a real thrill and a joy to be part of.
That's so cool.
So yeah, that's who I work with and what I do. And you'll find me kind of most places hanging about.
Yes, you have a great, we were talking about last names. You have a great last name in that no one else has the last name, as far as I know. So if you want to look up Emma Desi, you will find it. Sometimes so the spelling, right? As we were talking about before, sometimes
Yeah,
there's an
yeah.
H in
No,
there. Silent.
it's definitely a tricky name for people to get. It's Dhes for sugar I. And no, not many people have it. And in fact, in Scotland, we are the only ones. My
Oh,
family, we are unique.
nice. Feels good to be unique,
Yay.
Yes, I thought that I was unique because in Wisconsin, I knew no other Caldwells. And then you get out into the real world and Facebook becomes a thing and you realize there are like a million. Maybe
And
if
so
I'd
is
grown up
that
in
an English
England.
name? Did
I
that
think
come?
so. I think
Yeah,
so. It sounds English, right?
it
Caldwell,
does.
British.
Yay.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So probably maybe they even put something together, but it's not unique. So there's even more cats out there, cat Caldwells. So
Well, there's other
anyway,
Emma Desis, actually. I have disguised it. I like you. I did a Facebook search and a Google search, and I've come across seven. So there's at least seven of
really,
us.
that's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
So we must
Someday
be
we'll,
related somehow as well.
yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave aside the family DNA. We'll do that on another, another show. But as we're recording this tomorrow, Launchpad, the countdown to writing your book is coming out. I guess it will be out by the time this goes out. So I wanted to talk to you about this book, Launchpad, the countdown to writing your book. I'm gonna just say Launchpad from now on. Tell me a little bit about how this book came to be, because it's a really interesting and I think unique concept.
I think so too. Yeah, I do. So a mutual friend of ours, Grace Salmon, she came to me and said, I've got this idea for a trilogy of books and I want you to be the lead author on the first one. So Countdown, Launchpad, the countdown to writing your book is the first in a trilogy. So then there will be
Okay.
Launchpad, the countdown to publishing your book, which will be coming
Mm.
out soon. And then a few months after that will be Launchpad, the countdown to publishing your book. So it really is a one-stop shop really for anyone who's wanting to write, publish and market their book.
Yes.
And she had
Which we all
decided,
do. Like
which, yeah,
very few of us
totally.
want to stop at some point in that line.
I do. Once you get sucked in, that's it. You've got to keep going
You
through
gotta
to
keep
the
going.
end. But the reason she wanted to put this together is Grace is one of these amazing women. She's has so many wonderful ideas, and not only does she have the ideas, but she makes them happen.
Yeah.
And so Launchpad is the name of one of her, she calls it a radio show. And it's where it's an opportunity for writers to come in and talk about and let people know about I don't think it's specifically debut novels, but they're new novels coming out.
Hmm.
And if I remember rightly, this came about because through COVID, like so many things for authors, the opportunity to go and market their new books that were coming out it was completely put a stop to, because everything
Right.
was shut, of course. And in fact, I've got a friend who's only now, she published her book in at the end of 2019, I think it was, and is only now doing her tour,
Right.
her marketing tour. um so it was just an opportunity for writers to come in and talk about their books and try and reach a new audience. And through the course of that and the conversations that Grace was having with her guests, she realized, let's take what we're learning here on this show and put it into a book so we can reach more people and help more people. So
Right.
that's when she reached out to me to do the writing one, and she reached out to a lady called Stephanie, who is the owner of Red Penguin books, and a lady called Mary Helen Sheriff to do the marketing as well. So it's been lovely working with all of these women. It's been really, really great. But for me, two of the things that were the most interesting for me and why I thought this was really something special was this was going to be an anthology.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just finished reading an anthology on how to write called Swallowing the Whale. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And the contributors come from many, many different backgrounds, whether it be novel writing, poetry, art, graphic novel, a whole mix. And one of the things that I really loved about that was that you got different people's experiences, different people's approach to writing, and
Right.
how they explained things was different from one person to the next. And I really
Yeah.
appreciated that. And of course, there are some that you resonate with a little bit more than you do others, but you're getting a really rich, diverse approach and level of experience from all of these different writers who come together and share what they've got. So it was just serendipity that I just finished reading that book when
Right.
Grace came to me. I was
Were
like
they
100%.
writing about kind of the same thing in Swallowing the Whale?
There was different topics, so different areas.
Okay.
Some of it was more about the writing life, i.e., how do you tap into your creativity?
Okay.
Some of it was about how do you do the actual writing. Some of it was, which I love. I think you love too, Kat, the mindset stuff, the
Yes.
confidence issues. You
Yes.
know, all of that.
That's half of it.
Because it's so important, isn't it? I mean, that is
Yep.
managing your mind is half the battle to finishing the book.
Oh, yes.
So I
And
really
marketing.
yes, yes. um, so I really appreciated that. So that was serendipitous and
Okay.
just worked in perfectly. But the other thing that I really loved about what she said is I want this to be really actionable for our readers.
Right.
Because as you and I know, it's all very well to read a book and go, oh, that's really interesting. Oh, yeah, I like what they've said there. But actually, you don't take it in, you don't absorb that knowledge fully until you put it into action.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start implementing what you've been learning, that's when you really get to make it a part of your body, you make it a part of your writing process, and it starts to become second nature to you. So you stop thinking about it, you just do it automatically. And so at the end of every chapter in this book, there is a top 10 countdown, keeping with that
Mm-hmm.
launchpad
Yes.
launching theme. There's a top 10 countdown of things that each contributor of the chapter thinks are the most important that you need to and would recommend that you really put into action. Those are the things to do if you want to see progress in your writing, progress in your publishing, progress in your marketing. So for us, and I'm delighted as well, because Kat, you very kindly agreed to be part of this project and have written a fabulous chapter on how to develop characters. And we cover all sorts of things, and if someone
Great.
reads your chapter and they do the things and go through the top 10 that you have recommended, they'll make real leaps and bounds in how they think about their characters, create their characters. And as you say in the chapter, that's what keeps someone reading. It is,
Yeah.
yeah, what that person is experiencing, feeling, going through, how believable they are, how flawed they are. And that's what really a reader is invested in. It doesn't, they'll, if they love that character, they'll follow them anywhere.
Yeah,
um,
that's true. That's what we're all trying to do, right? Is to, I mean, we want to create a world too, a lot of genres, but the world can be great. And if you don't like the character, you won't
mhm,
continue watching, reading, whatever. But I really like this countdown idea because I don't know about you, but I will read craft books and I'll get really antsy about wanting to put into practice what I just read, and like I actually get annoyed when the craft books are like, don't pick up the pencil yet. And you think, okay, I'm a writer and you're telling me not to pick up the pencil yet, and I don't particularly have time to finish a book in one sitting or even five sittings. It can take me quite a while to finish, especially a nonfiction book. So I'm just like, I want to pick up my pencil. Like, I don't understand why. So I love that there's different themes for each, and like put adding more suspense. There's a chapter on that. Like, and that's really conflict, right? And
mhm.
making that sort of cliff hanging feeling that you have to keep turning the page. Well, I want to learn more about that. I want to read this chapter and then put into practice, okay, think about my characters or the book ideas I have, and how can I really sort of do these exercises so that when I sit down, maybe it'll just flow, or maybe I'm just learning how to add more suspense. I mean, I cannot wait to read that chapter, or pretty much every chapter in this book, because I haven't been able to read them yet either. Maybe by the time this goes out, I'll have my copy. But I mean, I think that is one of the really, like, the key components to this book is those 10 countdowns.
And I think that's a brilliant point that you make, that we don't want to read the whole how-to book before we start delving in. We want to be able to apply things straight away. And I think it's in my introduction that I do say to people, read each chapter, read it again, do the countdown, and you can delve. And what I love about it too is you can delve in and out.
Right.
So each of you listening knows what stage you're at with your book and where you're kind of needing the most help with right at this moment in time. So you can go straight to that chapter and read what the contributor is say about scene structure. I love scene structure. And it's Joe Bunting from The Right Practice who has contributed that one.
Yes.
Yeah, he really knows his stuff that way, doesn't he? So I was thrilled when he said yes, he'd be part of this. And that, scene is just so fundamental to structuring your scene, is so fundamental to that cause and effect trajectory path that you want to be leading your readers down. And when you understand how it works and how you can break a chapter down or a scene down into small bits, that one naturally leads to the next, which then the magic of it then naturally leads into the next scene. Not only will you have an aha moment, now I see how I get to make sure my readers turn the page, but it makes your life so much easier as well.
I was just gonna say, like, as the writer, you're not like, wait a minute, how do I get them there and why are they not there yet? Because somehow, all right, we could have tons of ideas, and if, like, vague ideas, and you sit down to write and you think, okay, I guess I don't really, you can put a lot of words on the page, let's say, and not really know where you're going. And scene structure is one of those things that you and I kind of started writing at the same time, and not in the States, right? So we didn't have access to, writing workshops that were local or community colleges, or, even you weren't in the UK. And so that, we were just sort of stuck with whatever internet there was in 2010. Like, there wasn't that much. I don't know about you, but it felt very like not close at hand. Like, I couldn't really grasp a hold of why I needed scene structure. I had a story in my head, and I just, it was just a mental job just to get it on the page. But if I had been able to not pay $600 for a class that didn't work with my time zone, maybe, or whatever it was. I think even at the time I talked to my husband about traveling to California, and he was like, that's going to be like $5,000 in the end, for a class. Yeah. If I had had this book where I could just at least grasp the concept as a new writer, and then, I mean, even now I consider myself not a new writer, but I'm going to be reading that chapter because it's just putting it inside of us, right? And if I had just had a little grasp, I wouldn't have gotten to 140,000 words and had an editor tell me to cut 50,000. That's what I was trying to get to. As the new writer, there are different mistakes we make as we go along, or there's more to learn as we go along. But that, especially if you're a new, that's what I'm talking about, that you don't overwrite, that your scenes really are concise and they're moving to the next one that's relevant, not just that's beautiful in your head. And then even as one, I'm working on, I've finished, it's now in the drawer, the 5th one, and I'm working on the 6th one. I'm still thinking about what I've learned, and now I still want to learn more, like, how do I go into this scene? What needs to happen? Because I don't know about you, sometimes I have the grasp of the scene, but I still have to think that question. What are they going to do, and what happens next? That, like, and so, or like, so what? Like, what decision are they making? And it's great to read 3,000 words and be like, that's right, okay, let's go.
Yeah, because it simplifies. It does it's like anything. It's like we have story structure. It's so that we have that skeleton to hang it on, and we it just makes like our life so much easier rather than scrambling around in the dark. And so when we have that, somebody once said to me, oh, isn't it a bit formulaic to have a structure for your scene? And I was like, I don't know. I thought about it, and then I was like, no. I was thinking to myself later, it's not formulaic. It's the guidelines, it's the rules, it's the boundaries that we need to make us more creative. And it's
Right.
the boundaries that we need to know that we're doing the right thing and we're on the right path and we're learning our craft in the right way.
Yeah, I think
Um,
there's rules to every art, right? And for
mhm.
some reason, writers think that they don't need to learn their rules, but I think you need to know the rules in order to break the rules.
100%, 100%. And it can feel frustrating when you just want to go with whatever is in your head and just be creative and let it all hang loose. And you can do that, of course, but no one is going to want to read that. They want to read something they can follow and that makes sense to them. And so that's when we have to either start with the structure in the first place, or we can bring it in revision, which
Yes.
is often what
Thank
I do.
goodness.
Yes, I
Thank
know.
goodness. We have options, you know.
We have options. But talking about kind of doing planning ahead, we in the book we've also got the wonderful Lewis Yorstad, who has contributed a chapter on outlining. And I know
Yes.
we're both a big fan of Lewis. He's
Yes.
fantastic. And he introduced all of us to a new phrase. So we, of course, we all know pantsers and we all know plotters, but he introduced us all to puzzlers. And maybe someone's listening and there's a something that drops, a penny that drops and goes, ah, that's what I am. I'm a puzzler. So a
I think we all
puzzler,
raised our hands at that point. We were like, wait a minute. I'm not a pantser or a puzzler or a plotter. So when Lewis said, what is a puzzler? We were all like, what is this? Tell us what did he say a puzzler is?
so a puzzler is somebody who they don't write linearly. So I don't know about you, Kat, but I write very linearly. I don't plan it ahead, a discovery write, and I start at the beginning and I work my way through. But a lot of people, more than we thought, it seems, certainly in the meeting we had the other week, most people were puzzlers, whereby you have a very, very strong image in your head, a very, very clear picture of a scene or a moment in your story, and you get to writing it and you get it all down. Oh, and then you have another very clear image or idea for another moment in the book, and you get taken away in the moment and you write it down. And then there's another one, a third one. Now, all of these scenes, they're all taking place at different parts in the book and the storyline. They not necessarily, might be one scene from the second act, then one scene from the third act, and then one
Right.
scene from the first act. And that is how the book for puzzlers comes together, by piecing all those jigsaw piece puzzles together little bit by little bit, until eventually you get the whole picture.
Right.
And when Kat and I were part of doing a call the other week, and it turned out that the majority of people on that
They were,
call considered themselves a puzzler.
you might be the only suspense author that's not a puzzler, honestly. We'll have to poll people. And we'll see. I mean, it makes sense though, right? Especially if you're busy and I mean, this makes sense on so many different levels. If you have an idea for a scene, you're going to want to write it out because you're a writer. You need to get it out, right? So I can see why. And when he said that, um, I have suggested this to some people when they're stuck in one spot to actually, and they say, I know where they need to go to be at the climax. And I have told writers, write out the climax
Mm-hmm.
because then maybe you'll see maybe they're not that far away, or maybe you're going in the wrong direction, right? You've just written scenes that are sort of out. And last year, when I had to toss my manuscript, I actually took my own advice, which is funny enough. Many times we don't take our own advice. We claim it's for thee, but not for me, you know. So I took my own advice and wrote the climax, and it didn't end up being the same. But I did realize there were certain things that I was kind of stuck on, like because I had written the scene, and then I thought, well, it just doesn't go any like he doesn't really need to do this anymore because what he needs to do is this, and this, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So it did help, and then I went back to linear. I was like, I need to go, you know, I need to bring him through because I like holding the hands of the character. But I think it's a great thing to have another name for people, that they don't feel like they have to be plotters or discovery, right?
Mhm,
It just,
mhm.
you know.
I mean, yeah, and I think just back off the back of what you've just said there about your own experience, I think that's wonderful for people to hear, so that they realize there is no formulaic way of doing this. There's no one set way. And
Right.
even when you find your process, it might take 2, 3, 4 books for you to really understand your own process. And you, most of the time, you write in the way that your process has evolved, but there are times where there's exceptions. And just like you, I've had that moment when one of my books, I got to the halfway point and then I had no idea what happened next. I couldn't figure out how am I going to get to the end of the second half. So very similarly to you, I went to the end and I wrote the end, but then I just wrote backwards and joined it
Oh,
up in the
cool.
middle.
Nice.
I don't know why, but for that particular story, that was the method that worked
Yeah.
best in that. So nothing is absolutely set in stone, and that's why it's great to know about how other people write, and ideas might come to you when you're feeling stuck, and then you can go, oh yeah, I remember Kat said that she'd go to the climax and write that, and that can unlock a lot
Yeah.
of the steps in between. So
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to know that you find your own process, but within that process, because you're an artist, there will be variations within that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, like going back to scene structure or outline. I mean, Lewis is awesome about outlining, and I've read his books. They're really great, and I'm trying to be more of a putting my ideas down. I'm not sure you can call them outlines, but still, I'm a bit, I'm not very conscientious. If you read my chapter on characters, I go into the personality. So I'm not very conscientious. I'm very disorganized. Like my world, I know where everything is. I'm one of those people. I know where it is, but no one else knows where it is because it doesn't make sense to anyone else. So that's like low conscientiousness. I'm not very organized
Well,
or
let's talk about that, because your chapter's great, and you
yeah.
a few of us commented on how you've brought a new perspective into that, and a new way of looking at your character development, and how you, even at the very beginning, how you approach who this person is going to be.
Yeah. Well, and that all came out of that book I was trying to write last year, which I'm pretty sure I will be calling Bended Loyalty. But as anyone's listening to the podcast, it's changed like 5 times. So we'll see. But it was trying to find that character because I had taken him out of another book, which I was going to write a pretty straightforward romance, his perspective, and decided he needed a whole book and thought that would be easy. So let's just get that out of the way. It's not easy. How much we fool ourselves. And realizing at one point that he had no personality. And that's a killer. Like no one's gonna read a book with, he was just like, I started seeing him as very victimish and whiny, and that's like no good, so throw
No,
it out.
we don't want to
And
read that. But
no,
how
nobody wants to read that.
no, they don't. And but how intuitive of you to kind of notice that, and because it's hard to, the characters that we create, it's hard for us to
Mhm.
be objective about them and admit that if they're not working, or something's got to change, or we scrap them. So I
Right.
think it's credit to you that you are professional enough to kind of say, I don't feel this is working. I feel I need to change things up.
Well, I feel like it's been enough books that he's sort of looking at me like him as a person hasn't changed, in my head. Um, but he's like, just come on, like it make me a little bit more. And I think that goes. I mean, I really struggled with the needs and the wants and the desires last year of getting that right with him because creating a male character who doesn't understand himself and is a bit lost
Mhm.
and needs to learn to make full decisions for himself, I found really difficult because of not making him tip into the victimhood whiny person. And I definitely, don't want readers to be like, oh gosh, they don't want that. For some reason, I think we're still sort of with the sexes, we have less um patience for that in a male character. We kind of have
Mm.
these inward expectations of what they should be doing. Um,
Yeah, and we want them to have agency, don't we? We want them to
yeah,
be, even if they can be whiny, and they can be, but they've
yes,
got to have be doing something about it, and
Right.
even if it's to act in a victim
Yes.
way
Yes.
and just
Yes.
amplify it.
Yeah, and so I think taking those, which we know our characters should have a want, they should have a goal, in which the plot sort of interrupts. They should have a desire, they should have um a moral need. Like they're not within their own world and their own moral structure, they're not quite hitting the mark there. Otherwise, there's no story. I mean, we're all living our lives. Our characters live on, in our heads a lot of times, but we're only writing the story about one particular event in their life, right? Like a memoir is not a biography. A memoir is about a particular point, right? That's why they're a little more fun to read. Biographies are only for famous people. The rest of us are like, and I made breakfast again. So I looked into personalities because I love personalities. It helped me understand myself and my husband because we are like opposites. And I thought, okay, here's the problem. He's this and this and this personality, and therefore he would only make this decision. The like what he wants is this father figure in his life. So what is he going to choose then? He's going to
Is
think
this your
he has
husband or
agency.
your character?
My character. He's like, what? My husband. But my character, he thinks he's making decisions, but what he's really doing is is accommodating everyone else, right? By like he's a people pleaser and he doesn't know that, but I know that because I did personality tests for him and made sure that he would make the correct decisions and then made sure that he would grow that way. And so I wanted to write the chapter to give another tool to writers because there is a little bit more sometimes to creating that personality because you're creating them out of thin air. Like it's just a person that doesn't exist and they have to be a certain way. And I don't know about you, but I've read a couple books, and my mother, especially ever since she retired, she reads a lot, and she'll come to me and be like, why did this author do this? And why did this author do that? And she came to me quite a few times on like the characters didn't make the decisions they would have made. And so she was very adamant about it. And so I looked into these books, and I'm convinced now that what happened is the author didn't really look into how human personality is and how we might become more balanced in our personality, no longer freak out at our kid coming home 5 minutes late or whatever it is, and we'll be more balanced about things. But really, we don't change that much. We just become more balanced. And so when we're talking about change, we'll have our characters just have a 180-degree change on us, and it just doesn't feel right. And the reader doesn't know why because they're not a geek like me and study mythology and human anthropology, but you get it. Like I'm sure you've read a book where you're just like, I just don't think they would do that. Like I don't see why they would. It's not satisfying, and we don't. It's that feeling. But I want to give writers the ability to the best of their ability, because I don't do it 100% of the time perfectly, right? But to the best of our ability, not have the reader leave unsatisfied. Like we want a satisfied reader.
Yeah. It's such a strange choice of word, isn't it? Satisfied. We do talk it, that is the jargon that's used, that your reader is satisfied. It makes it sound so unexciting, doesn't it?
Well, David Gawker makes it exciting. It's like they shut the book and they light their cigarette as though it's like a
Post-coital.
post-orgasm.
That's much better. That's much better.
It's a nicer, view. But yeah, you don't want them shutting the book halfway through
No.
because the person did something else. So this book, Launchpad, The Countdown to Writing Your Book, is really trying to help the writer write the book or edit the book, I guess, if I'll be using it for edit as well, so that the reader leaves satisfied, right? That's really
Yeah.
the whole point that we're trying to help people with.
Yeah. So you find the way to best put the story on the page. So what do I mean when I say that? I mean that often as writers, we have this vision in our head, we picture it in our mind, and we have that curse of knowledge. We know it so well that we forget that the person reading the book doesn't know what's going on in our brain, and we tend to skim over things, and I see this time and again, especially with scenes that are difficult, that we speed through them. And in actual
Mhm.
fact, the bit that's missing is the bit that we want to read. That's where all the juicy
Right.
stuff happens, that difficult conversation or that moment of doubt that your character has. And then
Mhm.
that's where they get to think through the change that they are going to be making over the course of the novel. And we see that happen on the page, not just that one day they do something different. And as you were saying, Kat, then we go, huh? Wait a minute, why have they
Right.
done that? But rather that we see that slowly evolve over the course of the story. And one of the ways that we're helping people do that is with the chapter of Show and Tell by the amazing Heather Davis. I just love this, was just eye-opening for me in so many ways. We all hear that phrase, show, don't tell, and we have it drilled into us. We've seen it everywhere. There's memes everywhere, but none of us actually know what it means. And we're sort of
Mhm.
hazarding a guess, and we think, well, what does, if I'm showing, then I'm showing the entire room that this person is in, every detail of the room. But actually what Heather helps us realize is that we do get to show key things that are in that
Right.
room, but we also need to tell the reader what's going on, and predominantly tell them what's happening inside your character. So the show element of it is the kind of external stuff of what's going on out in the outside world, but the telling element of it is what is the internal dialogue going in within your character's head. And that's what we put on the page. We tell our reader what the character is thinking, so that the reader can keep up with the thought process. Why are they making the decisions that they're making? What's running through their head to make them decide this is the action I'm going to take next? And that
Yeah.
is something I see again and again and again in new writers. And I hold my hand up here that is absolutely, definitely me in those early days. And when I work with my coach and she reads my pages, she says to me, you haven't put it on the page, Emma, you've got to put it on the page. So it's something that we still do even further down the line, even when we've got more
Right.
experience. We've got to be vigilant for that. And Heather gives us some great ways of doing that for ourselves, sort of catching ourselves not putting it on the page.
Right. I mean, it's one of those catchphrases that we hear a lot, and then we have to like sort of scramble to figure out what everyone else is talking about, especially as new writers. Like, I feel like I should know this. And the truth is, nobody knows what they're talking about half the time. Because she's Heather's not the first person I've heard frustrated with this and saying, actually, you do have to tell. And if you pick up a book that's well written that you love, there's telling in it
Mhm.
because it's impossible for a reader to just intuitively know everything. And a lot of times, what we'll do is show what everyone's doing. But I was talking to Edit L, and she was, I say Edit L because that's what her Instagram handle is. But she was talking about, then she gets a lot of new writers, especially, but even seasoned writers telling, what the body language and movement of the person is, or like, but that can mean different things too. Eyes widening can be in surprise, it can be in fear, it can be like, a grimace or a half smile could be mocking, it could be pain, it could be, so now you're getting into this weird thing where you're trying to show, but the reader could be receiving that information in such a different way. And
Mhm.
so there are times in which you do have to tell the reader what these movements or things mean to the
Mhm.
character. So yeah, we can go like way off balance on that, right? Way over. I won't tell anything. It's like, well, then nobody understands what your book is about, and or only tell and not show. So it's all about balance, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. All about balance. You need both in order to paint that full picture for your reader. Yeah, I think that's beautifully put. I'm thinking about, yeah, a manuscript that I've been looking at recently, and some lovely description in there, but it's all description. And so I don't know what the character's thinking, why
Right.
they're doing. Yeah, the author needs to tell me, or the character needs to tell me
Right.
why they're going to go and throw someone out the house, or why they're going to lock the door, or what makes them think that action will help them and get them where they want
Yeah.
to be in that scene. Aha.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it goes back to what we said in the beginning. We need to understand the rules You know, we need to understand what this means and really, um, what was the Russian writer that we all claim said this? He didn't
Chekhov.
actually say Chekhov. I like it's a CH. But he didn't say that. What he said is, "Don't tell me the moon is beaming. Tell show me that it's glinting off of the piece of broken glass." I'm like, so he didn't even make this hard fast rule that we've made into a hard fast rule. Like we've just taken it so far. But again, we need to know the rules. If you want to
Mhm,
break the rules, we need to
mhm.
understand them. I
Yeah,
wish we would stop talking in jargon, and I think that this book, Launchpad, The Countdown to Writing Your Book, is really going to help break down that jargon so that new and seasoned writers can be like, that's what everyone means. Okay, I'm just going to do it and just be empowered to write
yeah.
the best book that they can.
And we have been very careful in the book where we have used terminology that is specific to the writing world, that especially if it's been used in a shortened way, like POV or whip, we have been very careful to make sure that we're telling people what those phrases mean, so that if you are new to them, it's one you've not come across before, then now you'll have that, you'll be part of
Yes.
the jargon too, you'll be able to use it comfortably.
Yes, you won't have to go Google it. Because I think sometimes we do forget there are new people, but there are also people outside of America or the UK. We might have our own English jargon, and there's people all the time coming into this business from different languages and different countries. And I had to look up whip at one point in my writing career. I remember specifically being like, what? It's
Yeah,
like,
and it took me a long time. It's funny you talk about jargon. I do remember there being a time where I kept, I'm just trying to think of one that there would have been now. I'm thinking about James Scott Bell, who I love. I love his writing. He would talk about these doorways. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, what are the doors? I've not come across that before. What are doorways? Is this something I should know? It took me a long time to realize that he was talking about the break between Act 1 and 2, and then between 2 and 3.
oh, I
Other
wouldn't have
people just
known
call
that.
them act breaks.
He had to call them doorways.
Yeah, so there's a lot of writers come out with their own jargon, which I know from experience can be confusing when you're brand new to this. So we do not do that in the book. We use very standard phrases that you will find just about everywhere, and we do definitely make sure that we explain what they are, and write them out in full so people know. But
Wonderful.
Kat, I want to just jump back. So you said you've started the next manuscript.
Yes, because it's a duology, so I'm bringing it out at the same time, so it has to
Wow.
be finished.
You are on fire right now. It was
Oh,
worth all
we
that
shall
work you
see.
put in last year.
It was because now he appears in the next book, so he better have a personality. He's got to woo the girl. Yeah, it was completely worth it. Completely worth it. I wish that this book had been out, the Launchpad book had been out, but I'm still in editing, so I can still use it. But actually, working with him did force me to really look into characters, and so I am grateful for all the trouble my character put me through,
You
all
won't
the
forget
all
him in a
the
hurry.
agony. Sometimes I was
Another,
like, it's not. Go
sorry, I
ahead.
was just going to say another chapter I do want to make sure that we
Yes, let's
mention
talk about it.
is Stacey's chapter, Stacey Juba's
Yes,
chapter on grammar and punctuation.
yes.
Um, Now, for some of you listening, this will be easy for you. It will be something that you get, you understand, makes logical sense to you, and you might not need this chapter, although I still think it's worth looking at. But there are other people like me, putting my hand up, for whom this is not natural, for whom this is not sort of run of the mill, and we miss things and forget as well. We might do punctuation and grammar one way in one chapter, and then we kind of forget that we've adopted that style in the next and do it differently. Stacey's chapter she's such a wonderful teacher. She has made what could be a very dry topic not dry. She's
Yes.
explained things in really simple, easy ways, and she does this with everything that she does. Stacey gives fantastic examples and highlights very clearly what you put where and why you put it there. And I've been cheating and using this chapter a lot, even before it's been published. I've been
I
going
can't wait
back
for
to the
this chapter.
draft
I'll probably print it out and put it up.
and using it a lot. And that it was one of the chapters I was very adamant about having in, because it is something that I do find tricky, and I do sort of, and I'd rather get it right first time when I'm drafting if I can, then have to go through a whole manuscript and make those teeny tiny changes through the whole thing, which is so tedious. So if I can learn to get these things right and just take 2 seconds to go and look at Stacey's chapter, know what I need to do, and then come back and put it in my draft as I'm going through it, as I'm writing it, that just makes my life so much easier. And I don't think the other books have these things. I don't remember ever seeing a craft book that includes this. Yes, there are whole books on style guides and punctuation and things, but I don't want to look through a whole
Who
book.
wants to read that?
Exactly. So this is just for writers. This is what we writers need to put for our books, and then done. We just need one chapter.
I love how unjudgmental she is. Is that a word? She's not judgmental at all, Stacey. She knows this like the back of her hand. She knows grammar, she understands it. And yet she completely understands that it's almost a misnomer to call us writers. We're storytellers. Like, we're not grammarians. And I swear grammar has changed since they taught it to me in 5th grade, because I put commas where everyone says I shouldn't. You know? I specifically remember a teacher telling me, every time you take a breath. Well, that's like all the time. And so at first I had commas everywhere. There are specific rules, and it really does make it so much easier to do it from the beginning. And it's nicer to not get that much red back on your manuscript, because it's hard to do this. It's hard to get your manuscript out to the editor and have it back and just like, do I know anything? Like, as you said, with our mindset. So just knowing specific rules and having a guideline for them, it's empowering, and it feels good to get the comma where it should.
Yay. And she's highlighted the sort of the 10 most common mistakes that she sees, and you mentioned mindset again there. So just by having the 10 most common, and that she can identify those, tells me that other people are making these errors as well. I'm not alone. So that helps my mindset as well. It helps my confidence keep going.
Absolutely. This is like, this book has everything. It's upping our confidence and everything.
It is.
So where can people find Launchpad, the countdown to writing your book?
So you can find it in all the usual places. It's Barnes and Noble, Amazon, where else is it? Kobo, Apple. It's in wherever you buy your books, you will find it. It is out wide for everybody.
And is it ebook and print?
It is ebook and print, yes.
Okay. And the countdowns, is that a whole separate workbook, or is it within the book? Like, do they have to buy 2 different things?
Haha. So no, the countdowns, I'm so glad you mentioned this, Kat. So if anybody wants to sort of get a feel for the book and one of the countdowns, you can download Kat's top 10 countdown for free, and we'll put the link. I can't remember off the top of my head. Can we put the link in for that?
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes. Absolutely.
So that'll give you a flavor for what you will be learning. And then if you buy the book, at the back there is a special link, and it will take you to a special resources place, and there's some bonus downloads, which does include downloadable top 10s, so that you can print them out and put them wherever you need them to be handy. Awesome. But there's also some more details about all of the contributors. There's also a resources page where you can find out more on any particular topic that you're interested in, including things like podcasts, blog posts, YouTube channels, all kinds of places that are going to kind of help you take things to the next level if you need it. Awesome. So you can get those bonuses as a special code in the book there for that. But it's a wonderful resource. I'm so proud of it. Yeah, I'm so delighted to have been participating in it and being able to work with all these amazing writers. And I genuinely believe we have a phenomenal resource for not just new writers, but maybe writers too who are just looking to jumpstart their writing again and just need to get their mojo back. And this book will help you do that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Emma, for coming and talking to us about Launchpad, the countdown to writing your book. It's always great to see you.
Yes, and you. Thank you.